The crimson sun of Kepler 777 cast long shadows across the crystalline towers of New Shanghai Colony, their surfaces refracting light in patterns that danced across the biodomes below. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewing port of her apartment, her calloused fingers pressed against the transparent aluminum as she watched the morning traffic of civilian shuttles weave between buildings. 20 years of peace had transformed this harsh alien world into humanity's most prosperous outer colony. 20 years of careful compliance with Drachnid Empire regulations. 20 years of swallowing their pride. She knew it wouldn't last. "Mom." The newsfeed. Maya's voice cut through her thoughts. Sarah turned to see her 14-year-old daughter staring at the holographic display, her dark eyes wide with fear. The image showed a massive Drachnid warship, its obsidian hull bristling with weapon arrays, descending through the atmosphere over Capital City. Sarah's military training kicked in immediately. "Maya, get your emergency pack. Now." Her daughter nodded and sprinted to her room, while Sarah pulled up the secure communication channel on her wrist computer. The encrypted messages from her resistance cell were already flooding in. "They're implementing the harvest early. All colonies. Simultaneous strike." Her blood ran cold. The harvest. Every human colony knew about it, but it had always been something that happened to others, to distant settlements. The Drachnid Empire's most closely guarded secret, their dependence on human children with latent psychic abilities to power their hyperspace network. One child taken from each colony every 5 years. That was the agreement. But now, they were breaking their own rules. Maya returned with her pack, face pale but composed. Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. Her daughter was strong, but she was also precisely the age the Drachnids targeted. And worse, Sarah knew Maya had the gift. She'd hidden the signs for years, trained her daughter to suppress the abilities that would mark her for selection. "The safe house?" Maya asked, her voice steady. Sarah shook her head. "They'll check there first. We're going to Facility Deep Zero." Maya's eyes widened. The abandoned pre-Empire research facility was officially restricted, but Sarah had spent years secretly preparing it as a fallback position. What she hadn't told anyone, not even her fellow resistance members, was what she'd found in its lowest levels. They took the service corridors down, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Drachnid ground forces would soon be deploying. Sarah's wrist computer continued to feed her updates, similar ships appearing over every major human settlement, the colonial government's channels going dark one by one. This wasn't just a harvest. This was an extinction event. The sounds of chaos began to echo through the colony's structures, screaming, weapons fire, the heavy thuds of Drachnid shock troops' mechanical stride. Sarah led Maya through maintenance tunnels and emergency routes she'd spent years mapping, heading deeper into the colony's sublevels. They weren't alone in their flight. Other families were taking to the lower levels, clutching children and whatever possessions they could carry. Sarah saw the same terror in their eyes, the same desperate hope for sanctuary. But she couldn't help them. Not yet. The entrance to Facility Deep Zero was hidden behind decades of deliberately placed debris and forgotten machinery. Sarah activated the camouflaged biometric scanner, and a section of walls silently retracted. They slipped inside just as the heavy footsteps of a Drachnid patrol echoed down the corridor they'd vacated. "Mom," Maya whispered as they descended the facility's main shaft in a maintenance lift. "What exactly is this place?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Before the Empire came, before they restricted our technology and rewrote our history, humanity was more. We had ships that could fold space without Drachnid hyperspace gates. We had weapons that could shake planets. And we had something they feared more than anything. We had true understanding of the psychic potential in our genes." The lift reached the lowest level, and Sarah led Maya through dark corridors to a massive circular chamber. As they entered, ancient systems began to power up, filling the space with soft blue light. In the center stood a towering construct of metal and crystal, its surface etched with patterns that seemed to shift and flow in impossible ways. "This," Sarah said, "is a mind forge. It's how we used to train our psychic abilities before the Empire banned them. And it's how we're going to fight back." Maya stared at the device, and Sarah could see the patterns reflecting in her daughter's eyes, resonating with the power she'd kept hidden for so long. Above them, the colony shook with the sounds of invasion, but Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnids had finally overplayed their hand. They thought they were implementing the final solution to the human problem, but instead, they were about to remind the galaxy why humanity had once been feared. Her wrist computer chimed with an incoming transmission. Other resistance cells had reached similar facilities in their colonies. The pieces were falling into place. Sarah placed her hand on Maya's shoulder. "I need you to be brave now," she said. "What we're about to do will change everything. The Empire thinks they know what human psychics are capable of, but they've only seen what we can do in chains. It's time to show them what we can do free." Maya nodded, her fear giving way to determination. She stepped toward the mind forge, and its crystals began to pulse in harmony with her presence. Sarah watched her daughter approach the ancient machine and felt the weight of history shifting. The Empire had meant this to be the day humanity finally fell. Instead, it would be the day humanity rose again. In orbit, aboard the Drachnid command ship, Fleet Commander Vextor received the first reports of unusual energy signatures from the colony below. By the time he understood what they meant, it was already too late. The humans had kept secrets of their own, and the price of discovering them would be beyond anything the Empire had imagined. The breaking point had arrived, and with it the galaxy was about to learn why humanity's past had been buried so deep. Not to protect the Empire from humanity's weapons, but to protect it from humanity's potential. The Mindforge's crystalline structure pulsed with increasing intensity as Maya connected with it, threads of blue-white energy arsing between the ancient machine and her outstretched hands. Sarah watched from the facility's control center, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as she monitored her daughter's neural patterns. Around them, the deep rumble of Drachnid weapons fire penetrated even these underground chambers. But they weren't alone anymore. The facility's quantum communication array, dormant for decades, had sparked to life. Similar scenes were playing out in hidden facilities across human space. The resistance had always been larger than the Empire suspected, and now Sarah could see the full scope of their preparation. "Security breach in Section 7, the facility's AI announced, its voice eerily calm. "Drachnid heavy units detected." Sarah's hands clenched. They'd found them sooner than expected. "Maya, we need to speed this up. Remember what we practiced. Don't fight the connection. Let it flow through you." Maya nodded, sweat beading on her forehead as she pushed deeper into the machine's neural interface. The Mindforge responded, its crystal lattices reorganizing themselves into increasingly complex patterns. And then, something unexpected happened. The facility's walls began to shift, ancient mechanisms grinding to life. Sections of floor retracted, revealing massive engineering bays hidden beneath. And in them, suspended in stasis fields, were ships. Not the crude vessels the Empire permitted humanity to build, but sleek predators of metal and energy, their hulls covered in the same flowing patterns as the Mindforge. "Mom," Maya called out, her voice distant, as if speaking from underwater. "I can see them. I can see everything. The ships, they're alive." Sarah stared at the vessels in awe. She'd known the facility contained hidden technology, but this was beyond anything they'd hoped to find. The ships were psychic amplifiers, designed to be piloted by humans with the gift. The Empire hadn't just suppressed human technology. They'd buried an entire civilization's worth of advancement. The quantum comm crackled. "New Shanghai. This is Luna Deep Base. We're seeing similar activations across the solar system. The old defense grid is coming online. Please tell me you have good news." Sarah keyed the comm. "Better than good. We found the fleet. The real fleet." An explosion rocked the facility. On her screens, Sarah could see Drachnid shock troops breaking through the outer defenses. But they were too late. The Mindforge had completed its work, and Maya stood at its center, her eyes glowing with the same blue-white energy that now filled the chamber. The neural patterns are stable, the AI reported. Pilot integration complete. Shall I begin ship activation protocols? Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing not just Maya, but the weight of generations of oppression about to be lifted. Do it. The stasis fields dissolved. The ships, there were 7 of them in this facility alone, began to power up, their systems responding to Maya's psychic signature. Through the quantum network, Sarah could see similar reports flooding in from other colonies, hundreds of ships awakening from their long slumber. Warning, the AI announced. Drachnid forces have breached the main chamber. The massive doors burst inward, and armored Drachnid troops poured through, their weapon arrays charging. But they froze at the sight before them. Maya stood suspended in the air, tendrils of energy connecting her to both the Mindforge and the ships. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. You sought to harvest our children, she said, and Sarah heard the voices of 1,000 other awakened psychics speaking through the quantum network in unison. Instead, you have harvested your own destruction. The lead Drachnid raised his weapon, but it was already too late. The ships responded to Maya's command, their ancient weapons powering up. Energy cascaded through the chamber, and the Drachnid troops simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered to quantum winds. Above the colony, the Drachnid invasion fleet suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they hadn't known existed. Ships of human design but impossible capability rose from hidden bases across the planet's surface, their weapons guided by the combined psychic might of humanity's children. The very power the Empire had sought to harvest now turned against them. All facilities reporting ready, the Quantum Com announced. The network is alive. Sarah watched as Maya guided their ship up through the layers of the colony, its psychically enhanced shields brushing aside Drachnid weapons fired like rain. The vessel's AI merged with Maya's consciousness, showing her how to access abilities humanity had forgotten it possessed. In orbit, the massive Drachnid command ship turned its main weapon array toward them. Sarah held her breath, but Maya smiled. With a thought, she reached out through the ship's systems and touched the fabric of space itself. Reality twisted, and the Drachnid vessel's supposedly unstoppable energy beam curved around them like water around a stone. The Empire thought they understood power, Maya said, her voice echoing with the strength of the ancient technology now at her command. They thought they understood us. But humanity was never meant to be contained. We were meant to soar. The Quantum Com lit up with reports from across human space. The harvest had failed. Instead of cowing humanity once and for all, the Drachnids had awakened something that should have remained buried. Their greatest weapons proved useless against technology guided by the very psychic power they had sought to steal. But this was just the beginning. As their ship joined the growing fleet of awakened vessels, Sarah knew the real war was about to begin. The Empire had spent centuries ensuring humanity forgot its true nature. Now, they would remember. And the galaxy would tremble at the awakening. The Drachnid Empire had ruled through fear for over 1,000 years, but they had never known fear themselves. Not until now. Not until they watched their supposedly invincible warships torn apart by weapons they couldn't comprehend, commanded by the very humans they had sought to enslave. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, formerly the hidden vessel from New Shanghai, now the flagship of humanity's awakening fleet. Maya sat in the pilot's cradle, her mind merged with the ship's systems through interfaces the Empire had spent centuries trying to understand and failed. Around them, holographic displays showed the liberation of humanity's colonies proceeding faster than anyone had dared hope. Titan Base is secure, reported Admiral Chen, Sarah's brother, through the quantum network. The Empire's holding facilities have been emptied. 317 children recovered. His voice cracked slightly. They were being prepared for neural harvesting. Sarah's hands clenched on the command rail. The Empire's crimes were beyond counting, but the systematic exploitation of human children for their psychic potential, this was the one that they would pay for first. Status of the rescued, she asked, though she could feel Maya's tension beside her, already connecting with the recovered technology. These facilities weren't just prisons, Sarah. They were built on top of our old training centers. The Empire didn't destroy our past. They built their power on top of it. That had been the most stunning revelation of the past week. Every major Drachnid installation on human worlds had been deliberately placed to suppress and contain humanity's ancient power centers. They hadn't chosen random colonies to harvest. They had selected sites where the psychic potential ran strongest. New contact. Maya's voice cut through her thoughts. Multiple Empire capital ships emerging from hyperspace. They're different. The tactical display shifted, showing massive vessels unlike anything they'd encountered before. Where standard Drachnid ships were dark and angular, these were organic, writhing things of flesh and metal. They've adapted, Sarah whispered. They're using the harvested children to power their own ships now. The revelation hit the quantum network like a shockwave. Across human space, the liberated psychics felt the twisted echo of their own power radiating from the Empire's new weapons. The enemy had learned from their prisoners, creating abominations that merged Drachnid technology with forcibly extracted human potential. Maya stood from her pilot's cradle, her eyes blazing with blue fire. I can feel them. The children they've connected to those ships. They're still alive, still conscious. Her voice shook with rage. They're in pain. The Empire vessels opened fire, their weapons enhanced by tortured human minds. Space itself seemed to warp around their attacks. Two of the newly awakened human ships were caught off guard, their ancient shields failing against this corrupted version of their own power. But humanity had not come this far to fall now. Throughout the fleet, the psychically gifted pilots joined their consciousness into a unified network, sharing power and knowledge across the quantum void. Maya led them, her natural abilities amplified by generations of dormant technology designed specifically for this purpose. Remember who you are, she broadcast to the fleet, her words carried on waves of pure thought. Remember what they buried. Remember why they feared us. The human ships began to move in ways that defied conventional physics, their maneuvers guided by pilots who could see the flow of space-time itself. Sarah watched as Maya orchestrated a battle that took place on both physical and psychic levels, their ships dancing through dimensions the Empire had only glimpsed in their stolen research. And then they began to sing. It started as a whisper in the quantum network, a melody that grew with each mind that joined it. A song of remembrance, of power, of freedom. It reached across space to touch the minds imprisoned in the Empire's twisted vessels. The harvested children, their powers forced into weapons, heard the song of their own people. And they answered. The Empire ships began to shudder as their stolen power sources turned against them. Emergency alerts flashed across the tactical display as the imprisoned psychics, emboldened by the song of liberation, tore their way free of their organic prisons. Recovery teams, stand by. Sarah ordered. Prepare for mass rescue operations. The battle transformed into something unprecedented. A massive psychic jailbreak conducted across multiple dimensions of space. The Empire's weapons turned to ash as their power sources rejected their chains, the tortured children reaching out to their liberators through the quantum network. Maya coordinated it all. Her consciousness expanded far beyond normal human limits by the ancient technology they were only beginning to remaster. Through her connection, Sarah could feel echoes of the operation. Hundreds of imprisoned children being guided to safety, their minds finally free to join the growing network of awakened psychics. The Empire fleet, their stolen power ripped away, tried to retreat, but humanity had learned the price of mercy. The awakened ships struck as one, their weapons guided by the combined might of thousands of linked psychics. Reality itself bent around their attack, and when space stabilized again, nothing remained of the Empire's great fleet but quantum-scattered atoms. All rescued children are secure, Admiral Chen reported. But Sarah, they've seen things. The Empire's plans, their true nature. This isn't just about harvesting our power anymore. They're afraid of something else, something coming. They were building weapons for a war we knew nothing about. Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing not just Maya, but the avatar of humanity's reawakening. Send everything they recovered to the quantum network. It's time our people knew the whole truth, not just about our past, but about what's coming. As the data flowed through the network, Sarah felt a chill. The Empire's crimes against humanity have been shocking enough. But their reasons, their desperate attempt to build weapons for a war against something that lurked between galaxies, that was another kind of horror entirely. They had awakened humanity's power, but in doing so, they might have awakened something else, something that had been watching, waiting for signs that humans remembered what they once were. The storm was rising, but it might be larger than anyone had imagined. Deep within the Orc cloud of humanity's home system, the remembrance drifted silently among the ancient ice. The ship's quantum sensors probed the darkness, guided by the combined consciousness of thousands of linked psychics. They were searching for something the Empire had feared enough to enslave an entire species to prevent its discovery. Maya floated in her pilot's cradle, her mind extended through the ship's systems and beyond. Through the quantum network, she could feel the presence of other awakened humans across the solar system, their consciousness forming a vast web of awareness that stretched between the stars. "There's something different here," she said, her voice distant. "The space, it's wrong." Sarah studied the sensor readings, but they told her nothing. This far from the sun, even their advanced technology struggled to pierce the darkness. But Maya could sense something, and the other psychics in the fleet were confirming her impressions. The Empire's harvested memories showed a facility out here. Admiral Chen's voice came through the quantum link, something they never managed to breach. They sent entire fleets, but none returned. Sarah watched as Maya guided their ship deeper into the void. The darkness seemed to thicken, as if space itself was becoming more substantial. Other ships from the fleet maintained formation around them, their own psychic pilots reporting similar sensations. Suddenly, Maya gasped, "Mom, I can hear them. The lost fleets. Their echoes are still here, trapped in." Reality shattered. The void around them transformed, revealing a massive structure that defied comprehension. It was a sphere of impossible size, its surface covered in the same flowing patterns they'd discovered in the hidden facilities. But these patterns moved with purpose, forming and reforming in response to their presence. "It's a mind shell," Maya whispered in awe. "The stories in the quantum archives. This is where they kept it. The weapon that made the old ones fear us." The structure began to pulse with familiar blue-white energy as it recognized the psychic signatures of the human fleet. Information flooded the quantum network, centuries of hidden knowledge pouring into the awakened minds of humanity's children. Sarah watched in amazement as the truth unfolded through the shared consciousness of the network. The Empire hadn't simply feared human psychic potential. They had feared what humanity had once used that potential to contain. The thing that lurked between galaxies, the entity that devoured civilizations whole. The mind shell was both prison and weapon, constructed by ancient humans to trap a fragment of that cosmic horror. The Empire had discovered its existence, and terrified of both the weapon and what it contained, had systematically worked to ensure humanity never remembered its purpose. Multiple contacts. The tactical officer's cry cut through the revelation. Empire ships, hundreds of them. They followed us. The massive Drachnid fleet emerged from hyperspace, led by vessels of living metal that pulsed with stolen psychic energy. But they weren't approaching to attack. They were running from something. Through the quantum network, Sarah felt Maya's consciousness touch the minds of the enslaved children powering the Empire's ships. In an instant, she understood. The Empire hadn't come to stop them. They had come seeking help. Behind the Drachnid fleet, space itself began to tear. Something vast and dark pushed through, its presence an absence that hurt to perceive. The thing the mind shell had been built to contain had siblings, and they had finally found their way to this galaxy. The Empire knew, Maya said, her voice carrying across all frequencies. They enslaved us because they thought controlling our power was the only way to fight this. They never understood that the weapon and the prison could only work through free will. The mind shell's patterns began to spin faster, responding to Maya's understanding. Through the quantum network, Sarah felt the other psychics aligning their consciousness, preparing to do what their ancestors had done millennia ago. "Mom," Maya turned to her, eyes glowing with energy that was both ancient and new. "I know what we have to do, but it's going to change everything. The power required, we'll need them too." She gestured at the Empire fleet. Sarah understood. The Empire had committed countless crimes against humanity, but now they faced extinction together. The choice was clear. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Tell them how to free their captives. Show them what real power looks like." The quantum network expanded, touching the minds of the enslaved children in the Empire's ships. But this time, instead of simply freeing them, Maya showed them how to maintain the connection to the ship's systems, how to transform their prisons into proper psychic interfaces. Across the fleet, Drachnid commanders watched in astonishment as their stolen weapons became willing allies. The children they had enslaved offered power freely given instead of forcibly taken, power magnified by choice rather than diminished by chains. The mind shell's surface erupted with light as human and Drachnid ships moved into formation around it. In the quantum network, Maya led the combined consciousness of two civilizations in remembering how to use humanity's greatest weapon. The dark entity pushed further into their space, its vast form defying physics and sanity alike. But this time, humanity remembered what they were. This time, they weren't alone. The arsenal was no longer hidden. The war for survival could begin. The void between stars had become a battlefield of impossible geometries. The combined fleet of humanity and their former oppressors held position around the ancient mind shell, their ships linked through a vast psychic network that bridged centuries of hatred. Before them, reality continued to tear as the cosmic entity pushed through into their space. In her pilot's cradle aboard the Remembrance, Maya had become something more than human. Her consciousness touched thousands of minds, both the awakened children of Earth and their former Drachnid captors, now allies in desperation. Through the quantum network, she could feel the mind shell's power responding to their unified presence. "The breach is widening," she reported, her voice echoing across all frequencies. "It's larger than the one our ancestors faced. The mind shell alone won't be enough." Sarah watched the tactical displays as they struggled to represent concepts that defied traditional physics. The entity was vast beyond comprehension, a living void that consumed light, matter, and consciousness itself. The Empire's worst fears had been realized. The thing they had sought to protect against by enslaving humanity had finally arrived. "All ships in position," Admiral Chen reported through the quantum link. "The Drachnid fleet is. They're offering their ships for the convergence. All of them." Sarah felt a moment of bitter irony. The Empire had spent centuries harvesting human children to power their ships, believing control was the path to power. Now, at the end, they finally understood that freely given aid was exponentially stronger than anything that could be stolen. The entity's presence pressed against their minds, trying to unravel the very thoughts they used to perceive it. But humanity had faced its kind before, and this time, they remembered how. "Begin the convergence," Sarah ordered. Maya's consciousness expanded through the network, guiding the combined psychic power of two civilizations. The mind shell's patterns began to spin, forming new configurations that hadn't been seen in millennia. Energy cascaded between ships as Drachnid technology synchronized with awakened human artifacts, creating something greater than either civilization had achieved alone. "It sees us," Maya whispered. "It remembers. It remembers what we did to its sibling." The entity's assault intensified. Across the fleet, minds buckled under the pressure of its alien thoughts. But where individual consciousness failed, the network held. Human and Drachnid psychics supported each other, their shared power creating shields of pure thought. The mindshell surface erupted with light as ancient weapons powered up, but the entity had learned from its siblings' imprisonment. It began to split, dividing its vast form into smaller aspects that attacked from multiple dimensional angles. "The containment pattern won't work," Maya called out. "There's too many fragments." Sarah watched as her daughter coordinated the fleet's response, guiding them through maneuvers that bent space itself. But even with their combined power, they were only delaying the inevitable. The entity was too vast, too divided to be contained like its sibling. And then Sarah understood. "Maya," she said, "we're thinking like the Empire, trying to contain and control. But that's not what made us strong. Show them what happens when power is freely given." Maya's eyes widened as she grasped her mother's meaning. Through the quantum network, she reached out to every mind in the fleet, human and Drachnid alike. "The mind shell isn't just a prison," she broadcast. "It's a focus, a lens for consciousness itself. We don't need to contain the entity. We need to transcend it." Understanding rippled through the network. Ships began to move into new formations, their patterns echoing the flowing symbols on the mindshell's surface. Drachnid technology merged with human psychic power in ways neither civilization had imagined possible. The entity surged forward, its fragments converging for a final assault. But as they struck the fleet's defenses, something unprecedented happened. Instead of trying to contain the entity's power, the combined consciousness of the fleet flowed through it, around it, beyond it. The mindshell's light reached impossible brightness as it channeled the unified power of two civilizations. Maya led them in a psychic symphony that transformed thought into reality. They weren't fighting the entity anymore. They were rewriting the laws of existence it operated under. Space itself began to crystallize around the entity's fragments. But this wasn't the prison of containment the mindshell had originally been designed to create. This was something new, a matrix of consciousness that transformed the very nature of the void the entity inhabited. The entity's fragments tried to retreat, but they were caught in the crystallization. Their existence, which had been defined by consumption and destruction, was fundamentally altered by contact with the combined power of human and Drachnid minds. "The void," Maya gasped. "We're filling it. All of us together. We're turning nothing into something." The entity's final fragments were transformed, their dark emptiness converted into points of light that sparkled in the newly crystallized space. Where there had been a consuming void, there was now something else, a bridge between dimensions built from the unified consciousness of former enemies. As the light faded and space began to stabilize, Sarah looked at the tactical displays in wonder. The entity was gone, but not destroyed, not contained, transformed. And with it, the galaxy itself had changed. "The Drachnid ships are hailing us," Admiral Chen reported, his voice filled with disbelief. They're requesting permission to learn from us, to teach us what they know in return." Sarah turned to Maya, who was slowly emerging from her pilotless cradle. Her daughter smiled, tears streaming down her face. "We did what our ancestors couldn't imagine," Maya said. "They tried to fight the void. We filled it instead. And now," she gestured at the crystallized space where the entity had been, "now we have a door to places even the old ones never reached." Sarah took her daughter's hand, feeling the quantum network pulse with possibilities. Humanity had awakened not just to fight an ancient enemy, but to forge a path to something entirely new. The Empire's greatest fear, that humanity would remember its true nature, had become reality. But that nature wasn't the weapon they had feared. It was the ability to transform enemies into allies, to turn imprisonment into liberation, to fill the void with light. The storm had passed. The dawn of something unprecedented was about to begin.